Half-caste is a poem written by John Agard, and one of the first things that you need to think about is the phrase half-caste, and think about how you respond to that. What's your personal reaction to this term, and why do you think it implies inferiority and rejection? So in being inferior, being less than something, being worth less than somebody else, and rejection, obviously being rejected. So the term half-caste means somebody of mixed race, but it is now seen as an insulting term. So think about both of those words: half, being half of something, being less than something, being less than whole. And caste, we also talked about the caste system in some types of religion, where there's different types of caste and different types of status depending on what caste you're from. And these are some of the main ideas in the poem. There's some more information if you go onto this website, www.s-cool.co.uk. you can have a look at some other information about half-caste, and there'll be some other information on the internet and some more YouTube videos that you can have a look at. John Agard himself has got a personal reason for writing this poem, because he's actually mixed race himself. So some of the themes that we see in this poem are themes to do with identity, how people feel about themselves, type of identity that you might have with other people, living between two cultures, so there may be a conflict or a clash between two different cultures, and also thinking about the types of language and dialect in the poem, thinking about the conflict between those different types of dialect, different types of language, and how we value different types of language and dialect. And there's the obvious theme there of racism and prejudice that people may attach to people of different races. So basically, half-caste is attacking the idea that mixed race people have something missing, and that's the main idea behind the poem. If we have a look at the first stanza, "Excuse me standing on one leg, I'm half-caste," we can think about the tone that the persona in the poem is saying this. Is this person saying "excuse me" as an apology? Is it more of a confrontational "excuse me, what are you doing"? Is it angry? Is this person bitter? Is it humorous? It's a humorous image. It's a ridiculous image, and this might be because this is a ridiculous image to relate to a ridiculous and an outdated term, a term to refer to a mixed race person that we don't use anymore. "I'm half-caste" at the end of this stanza is maybe to do with the persona's voice, perhaps seeming unapologetic. I don't care if I'm half-caste, this is who I am, maybe suggesting that they're proud of that. If we look at the second stanza, we've got this repeated refrain: "Explain yourself what you mean." And you can think about the tone there. It's an imperative, it's a command, you have to do something. And if you think about the repetition of that, perhaps that's there to highlight the key message. He wants people to have to explain why they're using this language, what do you mean by it, what are you trying to say, and basically getting people to think about their use of that phrase. We've got lots of imagery, particularly Picasso's paintings. We've got light and shadow mixing in the sky, the weather being half-caste, and at the bottom here, Tchaikovsky, a composer, and weather mixing piano keys, the black key and the white key, and suggesting that could be a half-caste symphony. So the idea behind that is, if all of these things are half, we've got red and green, is that a half-caste canvas? We've got light and shadow, does that make something half in the weather? If that isn't seen as half, then why should human beings be seen as half? So we've got imagery used to compare this phrase half-caste to other things in life. A lot of the time, tone, you might say, is quite playful, and especially here, well, in that case, England weather, talking about the English weather, it's playing on words. There's this pun here with the word overcast and the sun passing. So there's play on words, there's use of language there, and that use of language and the pun and the rhyming here helps to keep the pace and helps to keep the poem moving forward. So if we look at the rhyme, we've got in purple here, half-caste, canvas, half-caste, overcast, pass, brass. It's not a formal rhyme scheme, but the half rhymes that there are, they help create the rhythm in the poem, and they help to build the pace, and they also affect the tone and perhaps make it sound slightly different at different points. Thinking about the structure, we've got an actual physical split in the poem when we've got these lines here, and we might be able to say that those lines actually are physical representations of divide or divisions between things, and maybe physically representing this conflict or this difference between somebody who's mixed race and somebody who isn't. We've got non-standard patois and dialect in the poem, and perhaps you could suggest that this is outside of the mainstream, this is not standard English. Perhaps John Agard is using non-standard English because he's proud of who he is, he's proud of his own identity, he doesn't need to change for anybody else. So lack of punctuation and using this dialect suggests non-conformity. He doesn't want to conform and fit in with what everybody else is doing. He wants to stand out and be proud of that. Moving on to the final two stanzas, we've got a change in pace here. So if we think about the structure and where the ideas are coming, the third stanza has got more of a personal approach, and the poem almost seems to split in half, so again that fits in with the title. The final stanza at the bottom here, with the 3 lines, delivers the final key message that Agard wants us to go away thinking about. So if we look at this stanza here, we've got I listening to you, I'm not going to do the accent, with the keen half of my ear. So it's more personal. I'm listening to you, the keen half of my ear. I'm looking at you when I'm introduced to you. So we've suddenly got it becoming first person. This word keen, it just means sensitive. So I'm listening to you sensitively. I'm paying you lots of attention. So if you think about the fact that people who are maybe using the term half-caste aren't being sensitive, they're not thinking about the person they're talking to. All of this imagery in green, my ear, my eye, half a hand, half an eye, half a dream, half a shadow, it's ironic. All of these body parts only being half there is absurd. It's funny, it's humorous, it's ridiculous that he's comparing being half-caste to being half of something else. This idea of being half a shadow, it makes it seem almost subhuman, not really a human being, something that's quite sinister. And there is that sense that maybe people are scared of people who are different to them, or they're scared of different races, and he's maybe suggesting that with that phrase there. Here, but you come back tomorrow with the whole of your ear, the whole of your eye, the whole of your ear, and the whole of your mind. The tone maybe becomes a bit more serious, maybe because this is the bit where he's delivering the message that he wants us to go away thinking. And at the end, I will tell you the other half of my story. He wants people's full attention and respect before he tells them that full story. But then again, it's still a bit of a playful ending because you've got that pun on half and half of the story. So an example question for this poem, if you just had this as the mini essay question itself, could be something like this. How does Agard use structure and language to express his views? So if you look at this mini plan here, you've got an idea about how you would structure that. Always thinking about the ideas first, so what is the main message, the theme in the poem, and then perhaps moving on to poetic devices. So how does Agard use the language to show his views? How does Agard organise the poem with the structure? And then finally maybe picking up on the tone and voice and what mood and feelings are expressed. So it's trying to use the different parts of spirit that you've got in a paragraph each. So what you could do now is have a go at this question. You could use the plan, or you could just go for it and use your own ideas. And I would also suggest going back through this video and maybe making some notes on your poem if you haven't got them already.